Good morning. Today is Mindful Mondays, and this is Esther Turner. And we have a wonderful guest here with us today. We have Mr. Yuri Rashkin. Good morning, Yuri.
Good morning, Esther.
Even though it's afternoon, we're playing like it's morning.
Like on Truman Show, and in case I don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.
Exactly, and I like that. So the interview is done with good night, everyone. But aside from that, interestingly enough, we're having this interview outside, and so only because it's a beautiful day out here today, and the 4-H Flare is just finished, and we've got August that's coming in here, and we're going to talk a little bit about who Yuri is and what he does. And for those of you who know that Yuri is with Janesville Community Radio, what position are you at the radio here, Yuri?
I'm a president of the board of Janesville Community Radio. I also wanted to warn our listeners that background sound is the fountain here at Rotary Gardens. And indeed is absolutely beautiful, just like on pictures. And yes, I'm president of the board of directors for Janesville Community Radio, Inc.
Janesville Community Radio, Inc. And so I understand that you have a background that has to do with radio. What else do you do with radio?
I currently work as a, volunteer, but as a host on WORT 89.9 FM in Madison, where I host Monday edition of A Public Affair, which is a public affair program. I get to interview exciting people on a full-fledged FM station that is heard from Baraboo to South Beloit, and it's very exciting to be a part of there, as well as leading the launch of WADR. We have just launched, and so now we're official.
Indeed, we are official, and for those of you who missed the launch, you can find us and research that, because we are on Janesville Community Radio Facebook, and there's a wonderful article in there about the launch. And Yuri, could you share a little bit about what that interview was about and where it went?
Oh, that was an interesting. We sent out a press release announcing that we were going to have this launch, and for the launch we had cheerleaders, and we had music, and Snappy, the mascot from the Beloit Snappers, was here getting pictures taken, and we got a reporter from Wisconsin State Journal, Barry Adams, who contacted us wanting to do a story on the launch of community of new low power FM stations, because there's several in the area. There's ours, there's one in Sun Prairie, Monona, and others that are launching right about the same time. And he was doing a story on it for Wisconsin State Journal. So I said, come on down. Mr. Adams came down and met with myself and a couple of other people involved with the station, Vice President Gordy LaChance, who is IT director with the City of Janesville, as well as Paul Kraft, our chief operator, were there, and we just kind of explained how we saw what we've been able to accomplish. We are, as Janesville Community Radio, unique in at least two ways, and that is, first, that we are independent of any city or any form of government. We're a group of volunteers and independent nonprofit, although we're currently part of United Arcs Alliance. But the second thing is that we have a baseball team that we have a partnership with, and that's very unusual. We have a baseball team that we have a partnership with, and that's Beloit Snappers, and we're very, very excited. And I think, as I said, that was quoted in an article, it's a match made in heaven, because it is an opportunity for small stations such as ours to gain legitimate, interesting, relevant programming, which is local sports teams. And it's also an opportunity for local sports teams to do this while remaining cognizant of their limited budget. So we were able to provide them also with new audiences as well. But it's overall has been, I think, a really productive partnership for both. Hopefully, I believe the Snappers and for the Janesville Community Radio as well. But the story ran on Sunday, in Sunday edition of the State Journal. It was actually front page, although below the fold, and was very kind to us. It had information about our station as well as the other stations that I mentioned, and I thought that was it. I thought it was wonderful. And then this past weekend found out that Associated Press picked up that story, and it was printed all over the nation, including newspapers such as San Francisco Chronicle and several others. I'm trying to think. Greenwich Observer, something like that.
Okay.
So all over the country, really, talking about Janesville Community Radio, of all things.
Well,
so that was kind of a nice surprise.
That is a nice surprise. It's pretty exciting, especially if you have relatives who live in San Francisco or who are on the other coast to say, hey, I read the story about you and what's happening there in your
really
community.
Interesting you should say that, because I have relatives who live in San Francisco and they didn't call.
Well, you know what? We're going to call them on that one.
Right.
They can be on the next interview. For them not calling, we're going to ask them to repeat the story. But, I think that's pretty exciting. Here we are in Janesville, and we have this radio station.
Right.
103.5 FM. And this has been in a process. My understanding has been how many years to pull this together?
It's been 2 years.
2 years.
Pretty much, yeah, because first the information about the station was forwarded to me by Secretary of our board, Judith Moriarty. And Judith does a wonderful, job of staying on top of news in general. We're involved in writing several Facebook pages where we shared stories, so we shared information with each other. And so she shared this information that there is a nonprofit set up called Prometheus that...
Would you back that up again and say that word again?
Prometheus.
Prometheus.
Prometheus is the demigod, I believe, who brought fire to humans.
Okay.
According to a Greek legend. Humans did not know about fire until Prometheus brought it to humans. And the gods were quite upset. And so they chained him, they chained him, whatever, had him chained to a mountain. And an eagle flew there every day to eat his, I think, liver. But because he was immortal, Prometheus, he kept regenerating for the next day. So that's not what this Prometheus necessarily was about so much. Prometheus was helping community groups to apply to FCC because FCC, Federal Communication Commission, announced the one-time window of a giveaway of radio frequencies, low-power radio frequencies, to community groups. And Prometheus was specifically set up to help people get those stations set up. So I thought it was an interesting bit of information. I wasn't sure how much interest I had in this, so I put out the call and said, is anybody interested out there in getting together? And I had a few people who contacted me and said, this sounds really interesting, let's get together and talk about it at least. I figured we had, I think, maybe 3 months before the deadline, and we got together with some people, including former owner of the building that we're in, and we talked about putting together an application and what that would mean and everything that came with it.
So that came together within 3 months. You had people that were interested in getting the ball rolling, is what you're saying?
No, we had 3 months before the deadline from FCC when we first met. And we just, different people came together. We worked on the application, submitted the application, and that's what happened. Then we got the approval right away. And then we've been working for the last year and a half to raise the money to launch the station. Well,
and again, because I'm part of the station with Mindful Mondays, this is Esther Turner. I know that the journey has been lengthy, and there's been a lot that goes into it. And it's run totally by volunteers. And how many volunteers are there, Yuri, off the top of your head?
I do want to clarify this. It's kind of funny because on one hand, it's we have about 40 different volunteers that are associated with the station, 40 different individuals that are volunteering their time graciously for the station. But we actually do have now one employee, and that is we have our underwriting sales director. So I'm kind of thinking that we're not 100% volunteer, but close, very close. One person away from being 100%.
Well, and I think that, interesting enough, there's so many diversified different positions that these volunteers can do. Let's talk a little bit more about the radio station itself. With your background working in WART, and what is the favorite thing you like to do when it comes to supporting the radio station? What is your favorite thing you like to do?
That's an interesting question, because at the same time I like to promote projects that I'm working on, and at the same time I also feel like I like to do whatever needs to get done in order for the project to exist and to succeed. So if that means writing a press release, then that's writing a press release. If that means sitting as a sound engineer, that's fine. If that means raising money, that's fine. Just whatever needs to get done. Myself, I enjoy talking to people. So my favorite part is actually just doing radio. And as in any small business owner knows, not that I'm comparing myself to one, but sometimes, especially if things are going well, you end up doing everything but what you actually started the business for. If you're a baker, the last thing you have time to do is bake, because there's everything else that needs to get done. So I kind of feel like my favorite thing is to do the program, but right now, because of all the things that need to get done, and luckily there's still WORT, which gives me the opportunity to have great conversations, and there's opportunities to sit in on different programs such as this as a guest and communicate with people who are kind enough to listen to this. But ultimately, I enjoy doing the program, and also, just helping out in any way I can. When it comes to those kinds of things, I guess the ultimate thing that I probably bring to any table is leadership, simply because it seems to be over the time something that I've developed. But go ahead.
I like that last part that you're just saying here, leadership. But what I'd like to do right now, Yuri, is put you on pause just for a moment, and we're going to get back to that. So we've got the wind blowing here. We're at Rotary Gardens, and we're listening to the waterfall. But stay tuned, listeners, because we're going to have some interesting things that we're going to hear from Yuri. So we'll be back soon, so stay tuned. And again, this is Esther Turner with Mindful Mondays, and we're at 103.5 FM. This is Janesville Community Radio, and my guest today is Yuri Rashkin. And we've been talking about the radio station and how it got started, and we've talked a little bit about the launch and how it all got started from 2 years ago. And as we left off on the break, one of the things that Yuri likes to do, and we had brought up the word about leadership. Share with me a little bit about your concept of what leadership is about, Yuri.
Well, that's an interesting question, because there's so many different aspects to it, and there's also many different styles to it. I don't know that there are, it's almost makes me think when I went to University of Utah to get my undergraduate degree in musical composition, my very first professor said, we can't teach you to be a composer.
That's interesting.
I was like, oh, nice, because I'm going to be a student here for the next few years. How's this going to work? He said, well, but we can teach you to, more about music theory. We can fine-tune things that are there. That we can do. I was like, okay, let's see what happens. And it's a little bit with leadership the same way. I think either you have it or you don't, but then specifics can be fine-tuned. And I appear to have something that people, maybe it's a certain amount of charisma, maybe it's a certain degree of helpfulness. I don't know. I would imagine it's probably, I'd leave that for others to judge, but I do find myself at the top of things that I get involved with.
Okay.
More often than not, although not necessarily so. I served for several years on the foundation for UW-Rock County, and I was not a chair or vice chair or anything like that, just a board member, helping out where I could. So there.
Well, interesting that you talk about that, because I am familiar with some of your things that you have done in the past, but when you talk about leadership, what is your strong point? What is your strong point?
I don't know what my strong point is, Esther. What is my strong point?
Well, I think your strong point is to support.
Okay.
I think you're an individual that likes to support and encourage, and I think for anybody in leadership, having that ability to encourage someone, someone who maybe just really doesn't, who likes to sit on the fence, who wants to take a risk, but they're not quite sure. And I have found that in my own experience here with Mindful Mondays, that you had the ability to basically not push me off the fence, but you had the ability to encourage me to get off the fence and take action. So I would say that's a very strong leadership quality, is to support.
Well, it's making me think of like somebody who walks around the bridge with people who are sitting on the rail, and I keep telling them to go jump. And but don't worry, there's bungee cord, you'll be fine. I don't know.
Well, it's actually simpler than that. It's more of an encouraging aspect.
I just feel that I believe that people should realize themselves. And when I see somebody and I feel like this can be an opportunity for them to be creative, to realize themselves, because maybe they've been sitting at dinner table talking about their relatives, and their relatives were like, you know what, why don't you go get a radio show? I think I'm helping those relatives too, because now maybe the person can take that energy and use it where it's supposed to be used, which is on the radio, talking to community about whatever is happening that's important. So I like to help people realize themselves, and if I can help them with media, then that's what I do.
And you do it quite well. So with that said, one of the things that you had brought up here, Janesville Community Radio, it is for the community. What are some of the things we are bringing to the community through the radio station? Can you share with that a little bit, please?
I think as our mission says, we're providing an amplifying tool for the community to have important conversations. And that's kind of all it's about. It's like we do not have a city square where people can come and speak their mind and be heard by anybody. That space is very limited. And now, because of FCC, we here in Janesville have an opportunity. And I thought it was really funny to me, because I think that people put a tremendous amount of importance on radio. And I would feel almost unfairly so. I feel the future is in the internet.
Okay.
And I think I'm surprised that people are as concerned about the importance of radio, except for with one exception. It is a license that is given by government.
Okay.
And I think that makes it very important, very meaningful. But I think as far as the size of the audience, potentially the internet presents a much bigger stage. But I'm very excited that we are 103.5 FM in Janesville, especially in Janesville.
Well, and I think that's a valid point too, Yuri, because we, as I know, having followed the journey here, that we are able to hear on the radio, but we also have the capabilities on the internet. So if you go to our website, you can tune in to what we are talking about or what's happening at Janesville Community Radio.
Absolutely.
So
For instance, that even though the Snappers play at Pullman Field and our signal, FM signal, doesn't reach there, you can sit at Pullman Field and listen to the game broadcast by our voice of the Snappers, David Kraft, and his color commentator, Tim Skolton. I know he's had a guest commentator whose name I don't recall last couple of games, but you can listen to the team broadcast the game right at the Pullman Field if you have your smartphone, and it comes in crystal clear.
And, I'm glad you said that, because I recently went to a game and I was able to tune it in on my phone. And for me, who really doesn't know a whole lot about baseball, it helped me understand what was going on. So they do a fine job up there in that box, David Kraft and Paul. So it's interesting to watch the game. It's a little lag time there, so it kind of messes with your brain. But you can figure out what had just happened, and then hear it over the phone and have it described, through the internet. So that was really quite an accomplishment. But let's switch gears here a little bit. I want to, as we're looking around here at this beautiful Rotary Gardens and the wind is blowing here, tell me a little bit about you, Yuri, what your background is. I understand that you do a little bit more than just being the president of Janesville Community Radio and have your program on Ward. What is some of your background here?
Well, to summarize it, I was born in Moscow, Russia. At the age of 13, my family and I, so with my parents, myself, and my brother, who is 9 years younger than me, came to the United States as refugees. That was 1988. We settled in Salt Lake City, Utah, which is where I have family. And I lived there for 16 years. I got my undergraduate degree, and I started a financial services company, a mortgage origination company. And then in 2004, the opportunity came up to move. And so that's when my ex-wife's family is in Wisconsin. We ended up in Janesville, and I've been here ever since. Since coming to Janesville first, I would continue to do mortgages. And then in 2008, I got elected to Janesville City Council, and it kind of coincided with the collapse of the mortgage industry. So I went back to school and got a master's degree in communication. And then after City Council, I started just teaching at UW-Whitewater pretty much at the same time as we were working on launching the station. And now I'm going to be looking at doing a lot more teaching at UW-Whitewater and kind of overseeing the community radio project.
Okay, that's a lot right there, Yuri. That's a whole lot. That's a lot to put into my brain. But I'd like to just put you on pause one more time. And we're going to get back with Yuri Rashkin here, so stay tuned. We're learning all about the man who's in the ship, and we're going to come back real soon, so stay tuned. Stay with us. And here we are, right back here again. This is Esther Turner with Mindful Mondays. We're at WADR 103.5 FM, Janesville Community Radio. Live interview here today, outside Rotary Gardens, and you can hear the waterfall in the background maybe. Also, the fact of the matter is it's a beautiful day, and my guest is Yuri Rashkin. You must hear about what he has to say here in terms of his background and of teaching communications. And I'm going to ask you this question, Yuri. Why communications? You went from mortgage to communications. Why communications?
Well, I believe that there is nothing more important than communication between people because I think we as humanity have a tremendous potential to do good or not so good things. And to help people communicate more effectively, I think is very important. It's kind of, I look at it from the media point of view where I feel like I can be a host, but I think to give it a slightly different avenue, area of comparison, I consider myself as being more of a mediator, somebody who brings people to the table, or sometimes just one party. And if I'm interviewing one person, then my goal is to just get them to say what it is that they actually mean, because people sometimes can be very ineffective about saying what's actually on their mind. They have something to say, they think they do, it bothers them, but when it comes to words, they get confused, they get trapped in their own thinking, and my job sometimes is just to clarify and make sure that they're clear. And then I feel like my job was done, in my opinion, well, because the listening audience has a chance to know what this person thinks. And then they can judge for themselves whether they agree, disagree, or whatever. And sometimes when I have more than one group, then I always like to find common points and find out where people are actually saying the same thing, which is frequently the case. People just don't realize that they're actually in agreement.
I think that's important, because I think you brought a valid point there in terms of, you and I have talked about this in the past, that I believe we had just talked about it earlier today about being active in listening. And so many people really don't know how to listen. So how would you tell somebody how to be an active listener? What would be some of the suggestions you could give?
Well, the class that I've been teaching at UW Whitewater, Communication 110, is basically a public speaking class, and so that gave me a lot of opportunity to think about this and work with students in helping them become public speakers, better public speakers. I think that as far as, first of all, being quiet and silence is very important and very much underappreciated. We're used to having a conversation, especially in the media, where if there is silence, we feel like we must jump in, especially as hosts, as if this silence is our responsibility and something is going terribly wrong because we're not making sounds. So we jump in and we start saying something, hopefully something that's smart and makes sense. But I think it's very important to create that room for people to think, and sometimes it creates wonderful outcomes. I think that if when I interview a person and there's silence and I don't jump in and I just kind of let that silence sit there and I let that person pick it up after about what probably is like 2 or 3 seconds of silence, what they will say after that is probably frequently, in my opinion, more honest and direct and poignant than some of the stuff that was said before.
And that's interesting you should bring that up, because I think that's one of the hardest things, even if you're not interviewing somebody, is being an active listener.
But with active listening, to address your question more directly, it's just paying active attention to what the other person is saying, try to visualize what they're saying, and when something is not clear, that's a good question to ask, because chances are other people who are listening are also confused about the same thing, because you're trying to actively understand what the person is saying. And it takes energy and it takes curiosity. And that's something that is very hard to develop if it's not there. There's wonderful, sometimes actually, I will almost correct myself. Curiosity is a fantastic thing, but you can kind of fake it, because if you're a good active listener, it's like being able to be good at something without enjoying it.
Right.
You can really train yourself to be good at listening to people, but sometimes the reasons for that listening are not because you're curious, but because you're trying to make a good impression. And to be honest, there's nothing wrong with that in the right circumstance. It's a skill. So if you can make an impression on somebody by being a good listener, even though you're not really curious about what they have to say, I would imagine that probably highlights that it's being active listener has value and it's a skill.
As I'm listening to you, it's interesting, because it's hard to be curious about something that you're not interested in. And so just by being patient and practicing that skill, you gave some really good information here, Yuri, in terms of communication and how to be an active listener. And
since this is Mindful Mondays, to me, being an active listener is part of being mindful, because mindfulness, if I understand correctly, is about being in the moment.
Absolutely.
And being an active listener is all about being in the moment. And listening and paying attention to what's going on, right?
Thank you for that. You hit it right on the head there, Yuri, because so many people confuse the word mindful, which we'll be talking about a lot later on, what that means. It doesn't mean just one particular thing, but about, I think, you being in the moment. And so for many of us, we're going to take another moment here, and we'll get right back with Yuri. He's been talking about his background in teaching communications and being on WART and with Janesville Community Radio. So stick with us. This is Esther Turner with Mindful Mondays, and Yuri Rashkin is our guest, and we'll get right back with you. Here we are. I've been trying to get some of these ducks out in the pond to do some speaking here. I was going to see if they'd come on board to be one of my guests, but they're not cooperating whatsoever. And this
is absolutely beautiful,
Well, thank you, Yuri.
I look forward to listening to this interview when it's January and February, and just thinking about the absolutely beautiful scenery that we're witnessing here, where the reflection from, just people can't see this, but There's this slight wind that his microphone is catching, I'm sure, and there's like waves coming off from the fountain and this water, this mist of water that goes in like this moving wall out with the wind, and then the light and how it plays on the leaves from underneath. It's beautiful.
Well,
Beautiful.
And thank you for that, Yuri, because Rotary Gardens is one of my favorite places, and I just wanted to do this outside. Thank you for cooperating and be willing to do this. And the fact of the matter that we have a willow tree right close by, and you can watch the branches of a willow tree that blow so gracefully. So Yuri had made quite a visual description here of what we're experiencing here today. But let's get back to a little bit more about you. And I think there's a lot of people out here that have some idea of the fact that you've been on the city council here in Janesville, and that you are a public figure. But there's some other things that people are somewhat familiar, and that is the fact that you have a musical, artistic background. Would you please share some of that approach that you...
Well, that's something that I've, being a musician is something I've been trained since I was a little child, because I started taking lessons first on piano, and that didn't last very long, and then violin primarily from the time I was 5 until the age of 12 at a music school in Moscow, Russia, that is set up specifically for musically gifted children, although I'm pretty sure that I got in there through my grandfather, who, this being Soviet Union and everything being dependent on the individual connections that people had, all the strings were pulled and all the connections were checked, and so with phone calls from my grandfather, who had some standing in the past in Soviet Union, I was able to get into the school. So there I studied until I was about 12. It was an interesting school because it had a mixed curriculum where you had throughout the day, your day would have consisted of, let's say, math, and then solfege, and then orchestra, and then Russian language, and then gym, and sight singing. So you would have kind of this variety of classes that were regular and musical at the same time, interweaved together, plus you had individualized lessons on your primary instrument. And it was very demanding, and when I was 12, I was told that I wasn't the best at it, and so I actually was told that either I had to transfer to percussion or bass. And so I transferred to bass, which was awesome. Really enjoyed playing upright bass for a year before we left Soviet Union. And then as I mentioned, I got my undergraduate degree in musical composition, because I've written a musical, I've written a ballet, I've written music for many, many different plays, and including some really fun partnerships with UW-Rock County in the last couple of years, and with Zach Curtis, who was there, who is now leaving Janesville, going back to Salt Lake with his equally talented wife and their wonderful family. So, as a musician, I also play currently in a lot of nursing homes and retirement facilities, as well as weddings and all sorts of events where there's a need for a piano player. And as such, I bring music and enjoyment to people all over the place. It's a job that really feels good to do and makes people feel good. And once again, going back to the mindfulness aspect of Mindful Mondays, it allows me to have kind of a musical, moving meditation of sorts that sometimes I find myself that I have been improvising for the last few minutes, and as I'm improvising and playing these different melodies, my mind is actually processing something that I've been thinking that's been on my mind, and it doesn't interfere with playing music. So that's something that's been, music's been very wonderful part of my life, although that is not the way that what I would have said as a young child, because in that age I really absolutely hated violin. I hated musical lessons. I saw no value in it whatsoever, and I didn't see any, benefit to it, and the difficult relationship that I had with my mother because of it, because she was so concerned that I stay in the school. I just felt was not worth the trauma that it was causing. So, and then go figure that music is something that I end up doing so much.
And that's interesting because I know a lot of people who have started out in music. My daughter was one who started out with learning to play the piano, and there's a lot of trauma involved because she did not want to be at the recital situation, and so there was a lot of stress, a lot of demand, and the fact of the matter that you came out of this and found yourself enjoying the music. And for you, when you play the piano, you said it's like a moving meditation, and you find yourself getting lost up into that. Does it really, how often do you play per week? Tell me that.
Well, I would say it mostly depends on how many performances I have scheduled. So I would say on average, I get to play 1 to 3 hours a week.
Okay.
Which is not very much, and it's certainly, but I'm not trying to learn a masterpiece or write a masterpiece. I'm just performing wherever opportunity presents itself, whether it's doing performances that are just improvisational or sing-alongs or silent films.
So that brings me to another question. I know recently you injured your arm, and are you able to play with that injured arm? Has that been complicating for you? Has that been something that you've worked through, or?
It's something that I've been able to work through so far. I'm still recovering, but I find that it's been, at first, it's been a recovery process. But in the last week, I've had several performances, and I haven't seemed to have come out worse for wear. So, and my physical therapist considers it to be a workout, and certainly my Fitbit considers it a workout because it counts playing piano as making steps. So I've got a great stats now on Fitbit. But yeah, I've been able to play fine, thank you.
Well, that's good. So, and that's another thing I'm thinking about. Do you ever just play just for yourself? You ever find out you have a day and you go, this is it, I've had enough. I really need something to relieve my stress. Do you ever find out that sometimes you just want to turn to just play the piano, or is that something that works in your life, or?
It's a great question. Rarely, if ever.
Okay.
Unless somebody's paying me.
Okay. I get that one, Yuri. Because I know the things that I enjoy most, I keep asking myself, when can I get back to that? When can I get back to that? But it's always better if I get paid to do something that I really enjoy.
Right. It's that hedgehog concept, I think, where you can find something that you're good at, something that people enjoy you doing, and something that they're willing to pay you for.
Okay.
And music seems to be one of those things for me, and so I enjoy all the opportunities I get to play, but I very rarely play for myself. I think I've had a handful of times when I've had something very traumatic happen when I would sit down and play. But it was like that's, on the other hand, if I walk by a piano, I'm usually going to sit down and play.
Okay, there you go. That's for me.
It happens usually in like hotels and restaurants.
Okay, so beware if there's a piano in the museum and there's red rope around it, you just might go in there and play.
At least I know I want to.
You want to.
Right.
So, do you teach piano?
I do not. No, I've had a few students here and there, and generally I stay away because part of my difficulty with music has been that I felt like I was being pushed into it, and my many instructors that I had over the years, I kind of sympathize with them because their job was to work with somebody regardless of whether they liked it or not, and I guess I consider it to be one of those things that if you have a child who is not motivated, that doesn't want to learn, then then I don't want to be part of it. On the other hand, I've had a few students, and whenever students are interested, then I kind of fall back into my helpful nature, and I enjoy helping somebody learn something. I don't have a problem with it, but it usually ends up being when somebody wants somebody to take lessons, not because they want to, but because it's the parent's desire. And maybe one of these days I'll open a school, but I'm not there yet.
Okay.
No, in fact, I'm a little bit surprised because as much as I enjoy teaching communication, I was very much opposed to going into the educational aspect of things when I was going for my undergraduate degree. Because being a musician, if you wanted to have a job as a musician, you went in the educational part of things. And I just kind of thought that I never wanted to be like an orchestra teacher. That was just not something, I don't know. I don't see why I couldn't do it, but it just never attracted itself to me. I found it attractive, but teaching communication has been a really awesome experience. So.
And you're teaching again where?
UW Whitewater.
UW Whitewater.
University of Wisconsin at Whitewater, yeah.
Okay, well, and I'm sure those students have a lot to offer, and they'd be a little bit more paying attention, so to speak, and opposed to somebody who is younger, trying to learn how to do the piano. As long as we're talking about communication, I know that there's something else that you do that not a lot of our listeners know about.
Really? What else?
And that is, you speak.
Oh, I speak Russian. Yes, I do speak Russian. And as such, I'm actually provisionally licensed with Wisconsin Supreme Court, and I work in courts throughout Wisconsin, which means that if there's a Russian person, there's about 5 of us in the state, and I am pretty much right now, seem to be without much competition for the southern Wisconsin area. So you will find me sometimes in courts in Milwaukee, Waukesha, Racine, and lately more so in Dane County. Actually been doing this for about 5 years, and only once have I done any work in Rock County, where I live. So it's been all around, but that's a very interesting job too, because it's obviously is a kind of a freelance. You can't schedule too much, in a sense that it's like a firefighter. If there's a fire, then you're called in, you put the fire. You can't plan how many fires you're going to have in a given year. So that's been, but then you have variety, because even though a lot of these can be the same, because if you have somebody who's getting divorced, and they don't speak English, one of the parties doesn't speak English and they speak Russian, then I get called in. And it's interesting because it's especially funny when you have, because it's the same questions that people are being asked. There's a procedure to it. And one of the questions is, are you currently pregnant? And specifically, especially when it gets to older women, they get really, kind of this is a very lighthearted moment in an otherwise stressful event. But, so that's kind of a predictable one. But a lot of these are unpredictable, because you go to small claims, and you go to criminal, and you go to all sorts of different things where you learn something about life on somebody else's mistake, and move on.
And there is, that's interesting about the pregnancy question. But I recall some time back that a question came up, and I learned something from you, and that was, what is the difference between a translator and the other?
Interpreter. Interpreter is oral, and translator is written. So if you're doing it in writing, that's the translating, and if you're repeating what somebody else says in a different language, that's interpreting. So I work as a court interpreter.
A court interpreter. And so one has to be good at that, because it's up to you to interpret the exact words or the essence of what that person is saying. So that's really important.
It's stressful that way, because the responsibility is absolutely there. That's why you practice, and that's why you double check things. It's okay to bring a dictionary with you or look words up. That's absolutely normal. and you just, it's really actually one of the good things about the United States and our court system and those kinds of things, because when you have somebody, there's a theory, underlying theory that interpreting is responsible for. When you have somebody, you want to make sure in court, you want to make sure that they understand what's going on, and you want to make sure that the system is just and that everybody understands what's going on, and their side is represented. And because I'm there to make sure that both sides are represented and they can speak, and also that both sides know what's going on to them, and how the system is likely to affect them. So, and to know that it's being done at no additional cost to the person and to the system, I think is really nice, because obviously there is a cost, but it is spread throughout. We all as taxpayers, when we pay for our court system, so to say, that's part of it, is that we pay for some interpreters. But when you're a person in need of an interpreter, that interpreter doesn't cost you anything at that moment. I think it's very important because it underlines the importance of the service.
And how beautiful is that? Doesn't get any better with that. So one more time, I'm going to just take a little break here. We're getting this nice breeze off the little pond area here as we're getting sprayed here. But stay with us, listeners, because we have more here to learn about Yuri Rashkin at 103.5 FM. Okay, here we are at Janesville Community Radio, 103.5 FM. This is Esther Turner with Janesville Community Radio. We've been talking to Yuri Rashkin, and he has shared with us a lot about his background. He's involved with Janesville Community Radio very much, and his leadership has brought me into the radio program. And Yuri has shared with us a lot about himself, so you can catch again listening to this on my archives down the road here, and we can share with you how to do that. But I just want to ask a couple more questions here with Yuri before we close off here, before the sun goes down. And one of the things I would like to ask you, if you could choose to do anything you would like to do now in your life, where would you put your energy? What would you like to do?
That's a big question. I mean, I think it's a combination of things. I think I'm working on several projects, all of which I want to see succeed. And at the same time, I also want to know that what is it that lies ahead, and where my energy best being put forward to, what is the best use of my gifts and talents, so that in time that I have available, I put them to good use. That's, I want to see the radio station succeed beyond anyone's wildest dreams and imagination. I want to see my career grow as an instructor and as a member of academia, at UW Whitewater. At the same time, I am a communication person with certain views, and political as well as communication theory and such. And so I just like to see maybe my future opportunities will be in public service. Maybe there will be opportunities in the future to put my communication skills to use helping people. I really like helping people make their dreams come true, which is something that something that I have a little bit of experience in the sense that I've been able to accomplish a few things, and I've helped others accomplish their what they wanted to do, and I enjoy that part of being of this journey. And I mentioned a few times that I've heard a few times over the past 2 years with the radio station, people who have come up to me and said, Yuri, I really appreciate that this radio station is here because it has given me a purpose, it has given me opportunities that I didn't have before. And that to me is very rewarding. This is what I enjoy doing. So I just want to make sure that I'm doing as much as I can while I'm here.
And I think that's quite beautiful, Yuri, because of the fact of the matter that you're very supportive in that area, and that you're willing to give an individual that support and to encourage them. And the fact of the matter that I see you as a visionary, and you do have projects, and you do like to make them come together, and you're willing to extend yourself to help people to make that happen. And that support is so needed for so many individuals. And I myself thank you. Thank you for this opportunity to work here at Janesville Community Radio.
Oh, you're very welcome, Esther. I'm very glad that you're part of this. I also want to mention that, I'm a father of 2 wonderful children. I have people in my life that love me, and I want to be able to enjoy that to whatever extent is possible, because I think those are things that are, it's first of all, not first of all, but to come back to our, to tie it in with our conversation, it is an opportunity to practice communication and mindfulness. But I think family existence and is something that gives our lives a lot of support and purpose, as much as projects that we're involved in. And so I'm very much working always on enjoying that part of my life as well. So that's where I'd like things to go.
And such a richness that you are a family man, and you have demonstrated that. And so many individuals that are so involved in so many things sometimes don't get that experience to have the richness. So how lucky for you and your family.
It's always about having a lot of support. Whether it's family, whether it's a project, it's so hard and unnecessary to get things done try to get things done by yourself. If you're working on something that is positive, that is good, you're going to attract other people, whether it is a family project or whether it is a community project. And I always feel like I'm trying to build something where if I step away, things go on, but hopefully I'll be missed.
Indeed, and rightfully so. With that said, Yuri, I just want to thank you for taking time out today to come and be with me in Rotary Gardens and talking about mindfulness.
Thank you for having me. It's most beautiful here, and thank you for this great conversation.
Yes, and for those of you who are listening in, this is Janesville Community Radio, Mindful Monday with Esther Turner. Please come back again, and I'd like to have you come back, Yuri, so we can have you come back and find out what you're doing down the road here a little bit. So thank you again, and with that said, have a great week, everyone, and make every day a good day.